Hi there, I'm Judy Holland, and welcome to Happy Nest, the podcast where you can hear the latest research and best advice for living well when your kids leave home. Join me as I interview experts and explore how to reinvent yourself during this critical passage. I hope you'll head over to judyhollandauthor.com and check out my new book, Happy Nest, Finding Fulfillment When Your Kids Leave Home. We're here today on the Happy Nest podcast with Illana Raia, a former big city lawyer and founder of Être, a mentoring program for middle school girls. She's also the author of a new book, Girls, Who Do You Want to Be? She's steeped in mentoring. She's grateful she was mentored by women lawyers as she was building her career. And she's also an empty nester who's forging forward with a great new project that brings her in contact with lots of charismatic and brilliant people. And she's giving back to the world with her passion, talents, and dedication. I'm here today with Illana Raia, who's a lawyer and founder of Être, which is an organization that helps girls be mentored by impressive women. Is that right, Raia? Or have I mischaracterized it?
No, you're exactly right. That's exactly what we do. It's called Être because Être in French means to be. And the goal is really to help today's girls figure out who they want to be.
Perfect. Dusting off my French that stopped when I was in 6th grade. That's good. I remember that's one of the few verbs I remember with this. I had the little hat on the top, right?
Yep.
The little circumflex or whatever that thing was called.
Exactly.
Okay. So Raia.
It's Raia. It's actually Raia.
Like a ray of sunshine. Ray.
Exactly.
Raia, how did you, I know that you were a lawyer. I think you were at Skadden, weren't you? Skadden Arps at one point.
I was.
So that's a really high-powered, probably high testosterone place. Oh my gosh, I could imagine. Right in New York City?
It was in New York City, and it was right after I graduated. I went straight to Skadden, and I was just one of the happiest lawyers, I have to say. I loved the firm. I loved the work. You hear all kinds of horror stories about big firms like that. I loved every minute.
Yeah. Oh, good. But that's the whole billable hours thing, which you can talk about later, which is a little complicated with children. But anyway, right?
It was tricky.
It was tricky. I get that, as I was a journalist on Capitol Hill racing around covering national news. And, that news just won't wait for you. It's just so complicated.
They do not care if the soccer game got moved. It does not.
I hate it when that happens. So anyway, so Raia, how did your experience at Skadden with female and I don't know any other places that you might have been in law help shape your ideas about mentorship of middle school girls, which is I believe the focus of Être, about that age group, right?
It is. And it's interesting, from the time I was really young, I had female mentors in my life. My grandmother was a lawyer when women were really not lawyers. She was one of only a very few women in her class at Brooklyn Law in 1936.
Wow. And
I remember watching her, with public speaking, watching her go to work. And she was a really formative role model for me, because it never occurred to me that she shouldn't be doing what she was doing. Mm-hmm. And then actually my 3rd year of law school, my mother went to law school. Oh. So she had been a nurse in a prior career. And when she turned 50, she went to law school. So I had strong female role models before I even got to the firm. And then once I got to Skadden, my very first mentor and the first partner that I was assigned to for the 2 years was a woman named Nancy Lieberman, who is a tremendous, a leader in mergers and acquisitions, which was the department I was in. And she shaped my entire introduction to working within a large firm, how to deal with clients, the caliber of work they were expecting. So whether I got really lucky or I just was drawn to these women, I think they formed everything that I wanted to do with mentorship coming afterwards. And I learned at their cuff the whole way up.
Wow. She paved the way. The way. Isn't that great? Really? So you launched Être, I understand, after you became an empty nester, right? Do you have two? I heard about a son and a daughter. Do you have two?
I have 2 kids. So and they're 20 months apart. My daughter is now 22 and my son is 20. When my daughter was in middle school, I was working, and I think that both of my kids were inspirations for this, but I speak mostly about my daughter because I saw it with her first. She's the oldest. I realized that I was working and most of my friends were working. And I was so fortunate to have this deep bench of amazingly accomplished friends.
Mm-hmm.
I had friends doing really interesting things, and we would all talk about it all the time. And I realized that my daughter just didn't see it. She would say, oh, that's your friend from law school, or that's your friend from book club, not realizing that one of them was anchoring the news or another one was arguing before the Supreme Court. She didn't see it.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time I thought, here I am, this empowered woman, and I am failing her because I'm not giving her female role models. I'm not looking around to see if she has a female pediatrician.
Access. She needed access to these
She needed access. And I thought, this is really ridiculous and very easy to fix.
Mm-hmm.
I have access. I was so lucky. So I started taking her to lunch with a number of my friends while we were all working.
Mm-hmm.
We would stop into someone's office for 10 minutes and let's ask about what it's like to be a pediatric surgeon. Let's ask what it's like to work in a fashion design house. So she really met these women and saw them early on. I wasn't even thinking about a website or a platform at that time. I just wanted to do that for her. And it was great. When I retired from law, my daughter was just finishing up high school. And I started to think about doing that on a larger scale. I wanted to have an event at my house, like a girls' summit, where I would bring all of my friends and we would answer all of these girls' questions, just local girls. And one of the women, Marie Benedict, who is a tremendous author, she has a new book out right now, actually, Lady Clementine.
Mm-hmm.
She said, this is bigger than a one-day event. You should build a website. This should be a platform. This should be available to girls, whether they live near you or not. You could be introducing girls to interesting fields and rock star women, and there's no reason this shouldn't be a platform.
Because not everybody, as well-intentioned as parents may be, has access to the fashion designers and the pediatric surgeons. And so if you can make it broader, then you can tap into the talent that is far-flung and might be in an Iowa cornfield, right?
That's exactly what she was saying, and she was 1,000% right. So my daughter was still in high school and I started to build the website. She graduated in 2015 and went off to college, and I launched the website in 2016. So it was after she left, but I still had my son at home, and it was post-career for me, but I truly think the idea had been brewing for a while. I just hadn't recognized it.
Mm-hmm. But the sun was right. You were on the brink of empty nesthood.
I could see the light.
You could see it. And for some, it's light or dark, depending. But that's all about how you frame it, right? But how did this? But there was a loss of your daughter. Your son was on the way. They say a lot of psychologists, that researchers that look at creativity said there can be a big a spark. You can ignite creativity through loss. If I pull away the time of COVID. But the tragedy and shock and change, and in this case, I guess it's just the whole world on pause. I mean, how weird is that? But that can lead to innovation, creativity, new ideas. Yes. Perhaps we get off the merry-go-round, off the hamster wheel. How many cliches can a writer throw at you when she doesn't believe in them? Tell me, how do you think the loss that we're experiencing now, how do you think, from your chair, do you think this could lead to new creativity and innovation once we're rid of this pandemic? And we will be rid of this pandemic.
We will be. I'll start with the empty nest portion of it, because I think you're right. It's distinct from what we're experiencing now with a pandemic. I think that when we look around and we realize we are in our empty nest, or we see it coming, I think what's really great about the way women approach it is we allow ourselves that little bit of sadness. We allow ourselves those feelings. You've been running up to the goal that whole time, making sure the kids are ready to go.
Right.
And once they go, I think we're right to allow ourselves some introspection, some grief, if that's the emotion, and the ability to say, how do I want to fill my days in ways that will fulfill me without having to put a lot of other people first. Right. And so maybe that's reading new things, and that leads to new ideas. Maybe that's joining new groups. Maybe that's reaching back to friends who were always inspirational in the past, and now you've got the time to really renew those friendships. But allowing ourselves the ability to say, what feeds my soul? What would I choose to do with this time? Balancing that with work that has to happen and bills that have to get paid, and, understanding the rest of our world doesn't stop when the kids leave. But we allow ourselves something a little bit special and a little bit fulfilling to fill that time. Mm-hmm. We should allow that.
Right. And in the empty nest, again, we've got that loss there. We have that whole, it's the whole Buddhist concept of impermanence, that starts to resonate once we become empty nesters and you say, whoa, things really do end. That the childhood, as I knew it, with kids under my roof, ended. I'm a little bit older. Certain other things end that have to do with youth. And how do we bring me back to the time of COVID and the fact that there have been many losses in income and friendship and athletic seasons and oh my gosh, the kids,
people in our lives. I mean, I'm in the New York area and my family is deeply in the medical field. There are tremendous losses right now.
Do you have family on? I have, my husband is a surgeon and he's in the hospital now, but he's not an ER guy, but he's in the hospital. And do you have people on the front lines?
Pretty much everyone in my family, except for me, is in the medical field somewhere. They are doctors. They are in hospitals. They're surgeons in the operating room. Yeah. So they're on the front lines and they're doing heroes work. There's no question. Right. And we watch and we're scared. And I think that's in every household, whether you have that immediately in your family or you're watching it on the news or you're reading about it, we are all sharing at the same level of apprehension and grief.
Right. And that kind of shock, that tragedy, that fear, that uncertainty that's in front of us, that mixed with the kind of pause, don't go out of your house, stop doing things, you can't go down the street and get a cup of coffee. How do you think that can give rise to, I don't know, a reframe, a new way of looking at things? Forgive me, my 3 dogs, including a Great Dane, barreling down the stairs to defend us from the mailman. You are giving an actual example of how we're all doing this. We're working from home. We are reordering our hours and our priorities. I think it's a similar thing to what we're talking about with the empty nest. I think you have time now. Yeah. Stop and breathe and reach out to the people around you. If you've got college kids that are back at home now, these are unprecedented opportunities to dive deeply into what they're doing and what they're feeling. I keep saying the best thing I can do right now is to just listen actively. Right. This is a chance to really absorb what everyone else is doing and what they're saying, what's important to them, what's their favorite class, who's their favorite professor, how is the remote learning different for them. But we're going to learn a lot by actively listening. And then I read constantly. I mean, this is more time to read and take my time with that. You're not suddenly scavenging hours to read. You have the time. And that can lead to new interests and spark new creativity. Right, right. No, absolutely. So, and again, what I say is I just did a segment did a TV segment yesterday about working with boomerang kids or in the time of COVID. And certainly one of the things that I stress is listen. And remember, you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth and, bite your tongue and listen. And it's unbelievable what you can learn and how much young adults bring back. I'm just astounded what my kids can cook and the songs they can play. And they're open to new ideas too. A lot of the stuff that I'm talking to the middle school and high school girls about, which is to use the time that you have now for good. Let's get involved philanthropically. Let's raise awareness for some charities. Don't worry about raising the money right now, but get on social media. Everyone is glued to their keyboards right now. Let's raise awareness for organizations that are really putting good back into the world. Tag all of your friends, start a movement. The college kids are, arguably even better at that. Their networks are bigger. If they're in a Greek system, they've got wide networks there. So the ability to make a big difference and be the change that we so sorely need right now from home, from your keyboard, this is the time for that. Mm-hmm. What have you learned about, so you wrote your book, I can see it in the background behind you, girls, I don't see the bottom of it, it's not high enough. Who do you want to be? Petra, who do you want to be? The bottom isn't showing. But girls, now I see it. So what have you learned by writing your book, Girls, Who Do You Want to Be? You've been working, I imagine, like me, at home or in a library, remotely, on your own, in an entrepreneurial, in a creative way. I think that this country is going to, once we're past this pandemic, it's going to just balloon into a direction of new innovation, new creativity, new ways to work, new ways to think. Perhaps we're cutting off some of the stuff that was unnecessary or silly. Or what have you learned by cooping yourself up instead of in a law firm writing this book, Girls, Who Do You Want to Be? What have you learned from that we can apply, that the rest of us can apply, especially those who do not usually work remotely?
So the book was really a very collaborative effort, and it was such a joy to put together. The book is a compilation of articles that I had been writing monthly for Huffington Post, for Thrive, for Elevate, for a bunch of different organizations, breaking down big topics for girls. So topics like equal pay or political awareness, STEM resources, interviewing luminary women, and then just my take on these big topics for them. So alongside those articles were quotes or interviews from 40 women who we had either met or interviewed, and 50 girls across the country. Mm-hmm. So what I learned from writing the book was it truly does take a village. And my favorite part of the book are the quotes from the girls. The fact that you could have a CEO's quote right here on the page and right next to it a 13-year-old's quote. And they're both talking about bravery, or they're both talking about mentorship, but collaboration and the realization that everyone has something to say and everyone's voice should be valued and heard within these different topics. That's my favorite part of the book, and something unexpected that I didn't know I would learn.
Out of the mouths of babes, right?
Truly. I think the other thing about actually writing the book was you could write it from anywhere. You had your keyboard, you can be at home, you can be in a library. While I was writing it, I was working out of my backpack constantly, and it didn't matter. And I think the fact now that all jobs across industries are seeing how well we can work remotely, mm-hmm. how the wheels can keep turning, how suddenly household chores are going to be more equally distributed depending on which parent, which member of the family is doing more work at the time.
Whoa, that's interesting. Tell me about that. That's a whole new, that's interesting.
I actually think that we are going to see, and maybe this is just my optimism bubbling up, but I think we're going to see an acceleration of the pay gap being narrowed. I think we're going to see an equalization of jobs at home and more employers realizing that working remotely can be very productive, that Zoom meetings can get the same thing done. I truly think this pandemic is going to change the way we work and the way that gender work is distributed and accomplished.
That's a really interesting angle, and I hadn't thought of that because I came up with 3 kids and working as a journalist full-time on the Hill with my husband in operating rooms all the time. And it was, mm-hmm. Very naturally every time a kid fell out of a tree or,
right.
There was always something, or else it would be the, come to the mother-daughter porpoise lunch from 11 to 2. And that's a huge event and I'm trying to cover on Capitol Hill. And somehow I managed to do all of that. But I was pretty breathless and ran a little thin, just one thing to another. And I was tired. And that's so interesting. Let's delve into that anymore. Maybe you think workplaces will be thinking that men and women may work 2 days a week at home or all the time at home, but that can be isolating. That's another thing.
It can be, and that's up to us to make sure that we stay connected, that more than these virtual happy hours, which we are all enjoying, more than that, we stay fundamentally connected. We're sharing resources. We're sharing what we're reading. We're sharing tips. The way that parents right now are sharing online education resources is so heartwarming and so amazing because there are groups like Common Sense Media and Scholastic and Discovery Education and all of these great groups that are putting out remote learning tools for parents who have suddenly been deemed to be homeschoolers. And now we do this. The way we're sharing these resources, the same thing can be done at the professional level. And I think it's going to be. What are the best tools you're using? What are your best life hacks for working from home? How are your meetings being conducted on Zoom most effective? This is the sharing of resources. That kind of knowledge strategy around this, I think, is only going to grow.
This is so interesting. It seems to me like a parallel boom to the, when Al Gore invented the internet, when the internet blew up and became this big thing. Suddenly, I graduated from Middlebury College in 1981. I didn't have a computer. I used to write papers with pieces of paper and I pasted them. And then it took all the paint off the wall and I had to pay a fee at the end of the year. But that's how I arranged my paragraphs. That's how you get an A on a paper, but you just ruin the room and it looks like polka dotted by the time you're done. But I think we're going to see a second boom, which you've given me such an interesting idea.
I hope, again,
in the use of the internet. The first boom 1, Raia, the internet. Boom 2, the use of the internet that we haven't really begun to really use. Maybe we can figure out how to be more efficient. Go expand on that.
Maybe. And again, this could be my desperate look for a silver lining.
Yeah.
And so allow me that. But I think our creativity is being tested and tapped in new ways right now. I think the opportunity to have deep thinking be part of your daily life, really deep learning, because we have time, because we are limited as to where we can go. We're going to dive deeper into our passions. We're going to look more closely at the things that bring us joy, and we're going to find new ways to share them. Yep. All of the at-home concerts that you're seeing, living room concerts that musicians are blessing us with, they're so amazing. I think you're going to see more of that across lots of different industries as people share the creativity that needs to be shared. And that's where social media is going to be, it's going to see its best self.
That's amazing. What other kinds of innovations do you think are gonna come out of this? Just think like out of the box. What else do you think?
I think we're seeing it with kids. I think there are a group of STEM-loving kids from all different areas and from all different schools that have gotten together, and they have a new Instagram feed called Stay In, Play In. And they're doing home experiments, and they're just sharing them. And, they're getting more followers, and every day they're putting out a new idea, a new do-it-at-home experiment, simply because they all love STEM.
Stay and play in, so they're having to take whatever materials. It's whatever you've got, right? Because
playing around, right? Stay and play in. And this was not, to my knowledge, this wasn't started with a particular school. This is just a bunch of kids, like-minded, who decided to share what they love. There's a STEAM squad, which has active social media accounts. Again, STEM-loving girls from all different areas, many of whom highly accomplished, award-winning girls. And they put together, it started on Twitter because they wanted to encourage younger girls to love STEM. And the girls that started it were, I think, 13 and 14 at the time. So you're seeing that kind of authentic sharing of passions coming from the younger set.
Right. And then maybe we're going to be lifting more barriers in addition to again, I don't know what your experience was, but the vast lion's share of raising 3 kids with full-time jobs was on my shoulders. Sometimes it's just the organization of it. I saw something up on one of your blogs or something about multitasking. And I know as my son studies psychology that multitasking is a joke. People for years have said, oh, women can multitask. Nobody can comfortably multitask.
No, we're spinning plates. We're throwing them up the air and we're spinning them.
It drives you crazy. And it's stressful. But for years I've heard, oh, you can multitask. You do those 17 things. I can only do one. But can you imagine how I could have done one if I'd had the one, or perhaps if I'd had half of the 17. So I think maybe out of this, it's a wonderful silver lining to grasp for, that we can see more equality in many avenues for the next generations coming up, raising young kids. For girls, is there any way that this increased second boom, as I see it, of the internet, if people are really going to use it in smarter ways, that can empower girls more? Not that I'm anti-boy, I have a lovely boy, but...
Well, I think yesterday was Equal Pay Day, right? Where we talk about the disparity in what women make and what men make for the same job, and how that is different by race, by geographic location, all of these different filters that we go through. It certainly is possible to think that think about how much time you're adding to your day when you're not commuting, and add to that you're doing household chores, sort of everyone. In my house, certainly it's all hands on deck right now.
Right.
Everyone is helping. There is no division of, oh, I did this, so I'm not going to empty the dishwasher. Everyone is just pitching in where they can. Imagine if that was the baseline all the time and everyone had the same work balance commute. Obviously, this isn't the way we're going to go to work every day going forward. But if the themes can stay, if the desire to contribute can stay, if the recognition from the employers can stay, that we need to be a little nimble and we need to be a little flexible with our work-life balance, maybe.
Yeah, no, that's a fascinating thing. And then again, always echoing boomerang back to my mind is the whole concept of this epidemic of isolation. But there may be ways that if we become a more virtual society, that we don't end up in those dystopia movies about virtual, societies. Yes. There's some of those, but there may be ways that we find to break isolation. Like perhaps I don't have to touch your arm to really connect with you. Perhaps,
right. For sure. I think our behavior is going to change, I would think, as a result of this.
Right. But I think also, back to that, I was talking about physical, I hit on this idea last night, physical versus, I guess, emotional / psychological isolation. And I'm thinking, really oddly, speaking of silver linings, that through the physical isolation, that we may be, in this period of stillness and rethinking, what are my values? What should I be doing here? What should I do for my fellow man? I mean, does that really make sense, what I was doing over that? Do I really need all those new dresses? I mean, I can't see anybody now. I don't need a dress. They're all sitting in my closet. What about, I'm wondering if the emotional, and it's like we're going to see big strides in emotional and psychological, in breaking isolation and busting through and becoming more spiritual as we've slowed down to think about things.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a great vision. It really is. And I truly hope that you're right, because we can see it and we can imagine it. We have hit pause on a number of things. And if that pause leads to introspection and innovation, then there is a silver lining, and we can weather the grief and the hardship that has come and is going to come and continue to come, knowing that maybe we can put some good back into the world, and maybe we can redefine what brings us joy and how we leave the world a little better than we found it.
So let me talk to you just as a human now. I mean, I don't know who's got, other than a psychologist, or I think a lot of people have ideas about how we best support each other. But my question, Raia, is how can we best support each other, me and my 80-year-old neighbors across the street that I can't go over and see? I'm actually really fortunate. I have Linda Wertheimer, the famous NPR reporter. I can see her actually. She's on her porch talking on the phone right now. And we're going to have a shout across the street.
Excellent.
Cocktail with Linda and her husband. But how do you recommend that people during this time of social distancing, other than shouting across the street as long as no one's hard of hearing, and quarantining, how do we support each other? How do we help others handle the loss of freedom, loss of companionship? I mean, I'm locked in a house with 5 people and 3 dogs, like literally 300 pounds worth of dogs. But how do we help those? Some people are locked in. My book agent can't see his grandchildren, and his daughter's got the coronavirus, and he can't help his daughter, and she's 2 miles away. How do we just logistically or emotionally or psychologically help? Can we use Zoom or social media to do it? What do you think? That's a conundrum.
I think that Zoom or FaceTime or Portal, whatever you use to connect with people, is more important now than ever. Yeah. I know with my parents, and they can't see my kids right now. My kids were in the city and college campuses, and there's no way they're getting together. But being able to lay eyes on each other on a very regular basis really helps. Yeah. I think making sure that we are putting other people first and we're listening to the experts. The idea that, I'm young and in college and I can't get it, no, we have to be parents now, and we have to set the rules. And that, while it's hard to do, is being helpful and is the right thing to do. We need to stay put. So shouting across the street at our neighbors, these drive-by birthday parties where people are driving by and yelling happy birthday at someone's house and then going back home. I think that this is the new normal right now, and we have to really pay attention. Flattening the curve is going to take a heroic effort from everyone, and it's important. And it's, instead of feeling emotionally distant, we can know that we're doing the right thing. Mm-hmm. We can send a positive text every day, randomly, to someone in your life. We can support a charity that's doing good work. We can write something, indulge all of your creative interests now. Now is the time, whether you think you're great at it or not. Write, paint, play music, anything that will fill your house with something new and something authentically you. I think that's what we do. And we have to put this crisis before anything else.
So last night I walked in to bring my ever-starving athlete's son some food as he was, I thought he was on a study session with me. And I went in there and I noticed that I had been cleaning out my closets to, in between writing stories. And I had found this really cool jester hat, and it was velvet and had bells on the edge. And I walked in and he's wearing a jester hat. And I look and I can look at the screen and I see one of his teammates I can see all the faces on the screen, and I can see there's a birthday cake and a banner, and there's balloons from his mother, and they're having a virtual birthday party, and actually
all day long.
And I thought, look at that. It was a study break, but I think his way was he put on the hat And it was funny to people because it's a little bit, he's not really the joker in the crowd, but he was wearing the hat. And it was kind of like, it reminded me of like an 8-year-old with one of those pointed hats at the party.
But this is the thing. Birthdays aren't going to stop. Anniversaries don't stop. The important milestones in our lives don't stop. Some of them are getting tabled for a while. We're not going to have graduations right now. We're not going to have proms. Those things that my girls are feeling, we're not going to have that right now. So the things that we can celebrate, let's do it online. How we handle those things is so important, because the younger generation, whether it's college age like yours or the middle school girls I'm working with, they're watching.
Yeah.
So if we are sad, if we are grief stricken, if we are nothing but anxious through this, they're going to see that.
Right.
If we are proactive and delving into what makes us happy and still getting done the things that need to get done, our work's being accomplished, we're having our meetings, and we're doing that with energy and with purpose, that will translate to them. And so I can't take my girls right now into companies to meet role models like I normally do, but I can give them virtual role models. We can interview people by email, and I can show in person anytime I'm communicating with them that life goes on, even if you're in your house instead of on the floor of Google. We're modeling for them. And it's really important, I think, to keep reminding ourselves that we are role models every day through this.
No, that's good. Yesterday, I had an amazing convergence of the 4 other people in my house, and we used everybody's talents. So my son worked on lighting because I had to do a TV spot. My daughter took 3 dogs, including a 160-pound Great Dane, entertained them, and got them out of my space. My singer-songwriter daughter painted my face with makeup to make me look 40 years younger. And my husband, who's kind of an obsessive-compulsive surgeon man, lined up all the books on the bookshelf. And I went right on the show, and bam, and there was a team, and everybody came laughing out of that.
Love it.
And I had comments, boy, was that put together. Are you kidding? It never would have been put together. Had it been me, I wouldn't have combed my hair. So I think we can make a lot of progress. So let me bring you back to my kicker wrapping up here, Raia. So many of us, I'm in probably my 3rd act. I'm 60 years old, and at age 60, I'm in my 3rd act. First was a journalist racing around Capitol Hill doing television, stuff like that. And then I founded an online magazine for parents of teens, interviewed tons of therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, and invented an online magazine. And then I wrote my book, Happiness, Finding Fulfillment When the Kids Leave Home. And out of that has sprung a podcast, and I'm now doing videos and other things, bringing me to you. So this is I don't know how many acts you had, but I know you had a
second. I would say second.
This is your 2nd act. So talk about 2nd acts just briefly about, because a lot of people are going to probably be headed for 2nd acts. Maybe their jobs are gone. Maybe the whole landscape of the world looks a little different career-wise. Talk about reinvention or becoming creative, entrepreneurial in the way that you have. Any words of wisdom?
Yes, I am the most unlikely founder ever. I never thought I would love anything as much as I loved the law. I loved law school. I was so grateful to all those who had taught me and so fulfilled by the work that I was doing. So my advice would be, allow yourself to be surprised. You truly don't know what's coming next. And a skill set that you thought was limited to a very particular vertical or a very particular industry might translate really well to your next job. Mm-hmm. When I was at Skadden, part of what I was doing there was called knowledge strategy, which was mining the law firm's internal data and leveraging it so that partners and all the lawyers could use it on a regular basis within a corporate group like mergers and acquisitions. But we were learning from ourselves and leveraging and passing knowledge from one generation of lawyers to the next. And I loved helping to create that department. This is knowledge strategy for girls. It uses a lot of the same skills. It brings me a new joy because I'm really, I hope, impacting this next generation. But it's about networking and organizing and leveraging knowledge from one place to be used in another. So you never know what's going to happen. Allow yourself to think about the what if. Allow yourself to say, I have earned the right to dip my toe in a different water and try something else, because your skill sets may well transfer. And just because you don't see it now doesn't mean it's not going to organically evolve into that. I can say from personal experience, I never thought that I would be doing what I'm doing, running a program like I'm running, and finding such joy in it. But my skill sets transferred and the timing was right. So allow yourself that.
Perfect. So now I'm going to correct my mistake of inverting your first and your last name. I was so
completely fine.
I was so pleased with myself that I got Raia, the pronunciation correct.
It was like a sports team thing. I felt like we were on a lacrosse team or something.
I made your first name into your last name. So Illana Raia, I'm signing off another Happiness episode with Illana Raia, like a ray of sunshine, Raia today, who's author of Girls, Who Do You Want to Be? And a lot of other things too, and a mother of two. And thank you so much. And I will be back in touch.
Thank you for having me. Stay safe, stay well.
You too. Thanks for tuning into my Happiness podcast, where we explore how to get the best out of the empty nest. I hope you'll subscribe, write a review, and reach out to me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Check out my website, judyhollandauthor.com. Have a great day, and remember, make it happen.